Underestimation doesn't break him. It reveals everything. At first, it feels like being overlooked, ignored, or quietly dismissed. Effort goes unnoticed. Presence gets underestimated. And while most people react to that with frustration or the need to prove themselves, he does something different. He watches. He listens. He studies the way people treat him when they think he has no value. And in that moment, a shift begins. What makes this powerful is that being underestimated removes expectations. No one is watching closely. No one is preparing for what's coming. And that creates space to build, to refine, to improve without pressure. While others stay focused on being recognized, he focuses on becoming undeniable. He sharpens his discipline, controls his emotions, and learns to move without needing validation. What looked like disadvantage quietly turns into strategy. In this video, we're breaking down 11 traits Sigma males develop after being underestimated, and why this phase often creates their strongest version. If you want to understand silent growth, psychological resilience, and how to turn low expectations into power, subscribe to Silent Wise and stay until the end, because the final trait is what makes people realize, too late, that they misjudged him completely. He develops emotional control, no longer reacting impulsively. Control replaces impulse. Reactions slow down. The gap between what happens and how he responds begins to widen. Before, moments triggered immediate responses, words spoken too quickly, decisions made under pressure, emotions leading the direction. But after being underestimated, something changes. He realizes that reacting instantly gives away control. It exposes position. It allows others to influence his state. So he removes that pattern, one moment at a time. As situations unfold, the difference becomes visible. A comment meant to provoke meets calm instead of reaction. A situation designed to create urgency is met with patience instead of movement. He listens longer, observes more, and allows the moment to reveal itself before deciding anything. That pause becomes his advantage. While others rush to respond, he gathers information. While others react emotionally, he stays steady. The same environment that once influenced him now feels distant, something to analyze, not something to absorb. From that position, clarity begins forming naturally. Without emotional interference, patterns become easier to see. Intentions stand out. Behavior becomes predictable. Decisions are no longer based on how something feels in the moment, but on what it means in the larger context. That shift changes everything. Mistakes caused by impulse begin disappearing. Actions become precise, and precision creates consistency. Over time, this control becomes stable. It is no longer effort, it becomes habit. The pause happens automatically. The reaction is filtered before it reaches action. What once required discipline now feels natural, and because of that, his presence changes. He becomes harder to influence, harder to provoke, harder to move without intention. People begin noticing the difference without understanding it. They expect the same reactions, the same emotional patterns, but they don't come. The absence of impulsive behavior creates uncertainty. Without predictable reactions, others lose their ability to control the dynamic, and that shifts the balance completely. Eventually, the realization becomes clear. Emotional control is not about suppressing feeling, it's about directing it. And once that direction is mastered, every action becomes intentional instead of reactive. He becomes highly observant, reading people and situations with precision. Observation replaces assumption. Details get sharper. Patterns become visible. After being underestimated, he stops taking things at face value. Words are no longer enough. What matters is how they are said, when they are said, and what happens around them. Most people listen for content. He watches for meaning. That shift turns ordinary moments into information. As interactions unfold, small signals begin standing out. A pause that feels too long, a tone that doesn't match the words, a reaction that arrives too quickly. These details don't feel random anymore. They connect. What once seemed like isolated behavior begins forming a pattern. He notices how people act under pressure, how they respond when they think no one is paying attention, how their behavior changes depending on who is present. That awareness builds quietly, without needing to be expressed. From that point, understanding becomes precise. He doesn't rely on what people say about themselves. He relies on what they show consistently. Behavior becomes the source of truth. Repetition becomes confirmation. The same actions, the same reactions, the same inconsistencies reveal intention without needing explanation. While others look for answers in conversation, he finds them in patterns. Over time, this observation turns into clarity. Situations that once felt uncertain now feel predictable. People who once seemed complex become easier to read. Decisions become faster because they are based on recognition, not guesswork. He no longer reacts to what appears. He responds to what is actually happening beneath the surface. This shift also changes how he moves. He speaks less because he sees more. He asks less because the answers are already visible. The environment doesn't need to explain itself. It reveals itself through behavior, and because he is paying attention, nothing important goes unnoticed. Eventually, the difference becomes undeniable. While others are caught off guard by outcomes, he anticipates them. While others are surprised by behavior, he expects it. Precision replaces uncertainty. And with that precision comes control over decisions, direction, and how he engages with everything around him. He stops seeking validation, building confidence internally. Validation loses control. Approval becomes irrelevant. The need to be seen, agreed with, or confirmed starts fading. For a long time, subtle behaviors were shaped by how others responded. Tone adjusted, words expanded, actions filtered through perception. It didn't feel like dependence, it felt normal. But after being underestimated, something becomes clear. External validation is unstable. It changes with opinion, mood, and environment, and anything that unstable cannot define confidence. As this realization settles in, behavior begins shifting quietly. He stops checking reactions to measure his value. He stops explaining himself to be understood. He stops adjusting his direction based on how it will be received. Instead, he begins evaluating himself through consistency. Did he follow through? Did he stay aligned? Did his actions match his intention? That internal measurement replaces external feedback, and because it is controlled, it becomes reliable. From that point, confidence begins forming differently. It is no longer built through praise or recognition. It is built through repetition. Small actions completed consistently, decisions made without hesitation, standards maintained without needing approval. Each step reinforces stability. While others depend on validation to feel certain, he builds certainty through alignment with himself. That difference removes pressure from every interaction. Over time, this internal confidence becomes visible externally. The way he speaks changes. The way he moves changes. There is no urgency to be accepted, no need to prove anything. His presence becomes steady because it is not influenced by feedback. Whether others agree or not no longer affects his direction. That independence creates a different kind of signal, one that doesn't seek attention but naturally holds it. People begin noticing the shift without understanding it. The same person who once adapted now remains consistent. The same presence that once sought connection now defines itself, and because it is not dependent on external response, it becomes harder to influence, harder to question, harder to ignore. Eventually, the realization becomes complete. Confidence built internally cannot be taken away externally. And once that foundation is established, validation is no longer needed. It becomes optional. He sharpens discipline, focusing on consistency over motivation. Discipline replaces motivation. Routine overrides mood. He stops waiting for the right feeling to act. The 4. Progress depended on energy. Good days moved things forward. Low days slowed everything down. But after being underestimated, he sees the flaw. Motivation is unstable. It comes and goes without warning. So he removes it from the equation. Action becomes scheduled, not emotional. Work happens because it is set, not because it feels right. As this structure forms, repetition begins shaping behavior. The same tasks appear daily, whether convenient or not. There is no negotiation with the moment. He shows up even when the energy isn't there, even when the result isn't immediate. That consistency builds something deeper than motivation ever could. It creates reliability. While others move in cycles of intensity and pause, he moves in a straight line, steady, controlled, uninterrupted. The difference isn't dramatic at first, but it compounds quickly. From that point, progress becomes predictable. Skills improve through repetition. Focus strengthens because it is exercised daily. The mind stops debating whether to act. The decision has already been made through structure. That removes friction. What once felt difficult becomes automatic. The same actions repeated enough times turn into habit, and habit turns into identity. He no longer tries to be disciplined. He operates from it. Over time, this shift changes how everything is approached. Challenges feel different because they are not filtered through motivation. They are approached through consistency. Setbacks don't stop movement because the routine continues regardless. While others wait to feel ready, he continues acting. That creates an advantage that is not visible in the moment but becomes clear over time. People often misunderstand this phase. They assume discipline comes from strong will or constant drive. But what they don't see is the system behind it, the structure that removes dependence on emotion, the repetition that builds stability, the consistency that makes progress inevitable. Eventually, the result becomes undeniable. While others struggle to maintain direction, he continues moving forward without interruption. Not because he is more motivated, but because he no longer depends on it. He limits access to himself, becoming more selective with people. Access gets restricted, filters go up, presence becomes intentional. After being underestimated, he stops giving the same level of availability to everyone. Before, interaction was open, conversations flowed, time was shared freely, attention was given without much thought. But over time, something becomes clear. Not every interaction adds value. Not every person aligns with direction, and unlimited access creates unnecessary exposure. As this realization settles in, behavior begins shifting quietly. Some conversations become shorter, others stop completely. Invitations are considered instead of accepted automatically. He doesn't announce these changes, he applies them. The same people who once had full access now experience distance without explanation. It's not emotional, it's structural. Time and attention are no longer distributed equally, they are placed where they matter. From that point, the dynamic begins changing. People respond differently when access is limited. They become more intentional, they choose their words more carefully, they value the interaction more because it is no longer guaranteed. The same presence that once felt constant now feels selective, and selectivity creates value. While others remain available to everything, he becomes available by choice. Over time, this selectivity strengthens his environment. Distractions reduce, noise disappears. The interactions that remain become clearer, more aligned, more focused. He is no longer influenced by every external input because he has reduced what can reach him. That control creates stability. Decisions become sharper, focus becomes deeper. People often misunderstand this phase. They interpret it as distance or change in personality. But what they are actually seeing is clarity. The difference between reacting to everyone and choosing who to engage with. It's not about isolation, it's about alignment. Eventually the result becomes consistent. His time is protected, his attention is intentional, and the people around him reflect that shift, because once access is controlled, everything connected to it changes as well. He masters silence, speaking only when necessary. Silence becomes a tool. Fewer words, greater impact. He stops filling space just to keep a conversation alive. Before, speaking felt necessary, responding quickly, adding detail, making sure nothing was misunderstood. But over time, he notices something different. The more he speaks, the less each word matters. The more he explains, the less others listen. That realization changes how he uses his voice. As interactions continue, restraint begins shaping his presence. He listens longer than expected. He allows pauses to exist without rushing to fill them. When he does speak, it's direct, controlled, and aligned with the moment. No extra detail, no repetition, just the point. That contrast makes a difference. In environments filled with constant noise, silence stands out. And when he finally speaks, attention shifts naturally. From that point, communication becomes precise. Words are no longer used to maintain connection. They are used to deliver meaning. Each response carries intention. Each statement is placed where it matters. The absence of unnecessary speech creates clarity. Others begin listening more carefully because they know there will be no access to filter through. What is said becomes easier to remember because it is not diluted. Over time, this mastery changes the dynamic completely. People reveal more because he gives them space. Conversations go deeper because he does not interrupt their flow. And when he chooses to speak, his words influence the direction of the interaction without needing force. Silence gives him control over timing, and timing gives him control over impact. This approach also removes pressure. There is no need to react to everything, no need to respond to every input. What deserves attention receives it. What doesn't is left in silence. That filtering keeps his focus intact and his presence stable. Eventually, the effect becomes clear. While others rely on constant communication to stay relevant, he relies on precision. And in that precision, his voice carries more weight than noise ever could. He builds strategic thinking. Acting with long-term vision, strategy replaces impulse. Long-term over immediate. Every move gains context beyond the moment. After being underestimated, he stops focusing on quick wins and starts thinking in sequences. What happens now is no longer isolated. It connects to what happens next. Most people react to situations as they appear, solving what is in front of them. But he begins stepping back, looking at direction instead of momentary outcomes. As situations unfold, this shift becomes visible in how he decides. He doesn't rush to act just because something feels urgent. He evaluates timing, consequence, and alignment. A short-term gain that disrupts long-term direction gets ignored. A slower path that builds stability gets chosen. That patience creates distance between him and impulsive decision-making. While others move quickly, he moves deliberately, and that difference compounds over time. From that point, patterns begin guiding action. Past experiences connect with present situations, forming a clearer understanding of what leads to certain outcomes. He no longer guesses, he anticipates. Each decision is placed within a larger framework. Actions are not just reactions. They are part of a sequence designed to lead somewhere specific. That structure removes randomness from his movement. Over time, this approach creates control. He is no longer influenced by temporary pressure or emotional urgency. The bigger picture stays in focus. That focus filters distractions automatically. What doesn't align with long-term direction gets removed without hesitation. What supports it receives attention and effort. The environment becomes organized around purpose instead of reaction. People often don't notice this shift immediately. Strategic thinking doesn't look dramatic. It looks calm, slow, sometimes even inactive. But beneath that calm, everything is aligned. Decisions are placed with intention, movements are connected, and outcomes begin forming long before they become visible. Eventually, the difference becomes undeniable. While others chase immediate results, he builds outcomes that last. And because those outcomes are built over time, they become harder to disrupt, harder to compete with, and easier to sustain. He becomes independent, relying less on others for direction. Independence replaces reliance, fewer opinions, clearer direction. After being underestimated, he stops looking outward for guidance on what he already knows needs to be done. Before, decisions were influenced, advice considered, validation checked, direction adjusted based on others' perspectives. It felt responsible. It felt safe. But over time, something becomes clear. Too many inputs create confusion. Too many voices weaken clarity. And reliance on direction from others delays movement. As this realization settles, behavior begins shifting quietly. He starts trusting his own evaluation of situations. Decisions are made faster, not because they are rushed, but because they are not filtered through multiple opinions. The need to confirm every step disappears. He still listens, still observes, but he no longer depends. Information becomes input, not direction. That distinction changes how he moves completely. From that point, clarity strengthens. Without constant external influence, his thinking becomes more consistent. The same principles guide his actions across different situations. There is no need to adjust based on who is present or what is suggested. His direction remains stable because it is defined internally. That stability removes hesitation. Action becomes direct, not negotiated. Over time, this independence builds confidence naturally. Each decision reinforces trust in his own judgment. Each outcome, whether success or correction, adds to understanding. He learns faster because he acts without waiting. Mistakes are processed directly, not filtered through explanation. That process sharpens awareness and strengthens control. People begin noticing the difference without understanding it. The same person who once asked for input now moves with certainty. The same presence that once adapted now remains steady. And because he is no longer dependent on external direction, he becomes harder to influence, harder to redirect. Eventually, the shift becomes permanent. Independence is no longer a choice, it becomes the default. Direction comes from within, and once that foundation is built, it removes one of the biggest limitations waiting for others to decide what should already be clear. He controls his time and energy, eliminating distractions. Control replaces drift. Time gets structured. Energy gets protected. He stops letting the day decide what gets his attention. Before, Distractions felt normal: messages, random tasks, conversations that pull focus without adding value. Movement existed, but direction didn't. After being underestimated, that changes. He begins seeing time as a resource that either builds progress or erodes it. And once that becomes clear, everything starts getting filtered. As the environment continues, patterns of distraction become obvious. The same interruptions appear daily. The same low-value activities consume hours without result. What once felt harmless now feels costly. He notices how quickly focus breaks, how easily energy gets scattered, and instead of accepting that as normal, he starts removing it piece by piece. Notifications get limited, unnecessary conversations get reduced, tasks that don't align get ignored. Not dramatically, just consistently. From that point, attention begins stabilizing. Fewer interruptions create deeper focus. With deeper focus comes better output. The same amount of time produces stronger results because it is no longer divided across everything. Energy remains steady because it is not constantly drained. While others move between tasks without direction, he stays with one until it is complete. That continuity builds momentum. Over time, this control compounds. Days become structured instead of reactive. Priorities guide action instead of urgency. The mind stops switching constantly and starts staying engaged. That engagement creates clarity. Decisions improve because attention is not fragmented. Progress becomes visible because effort is not diluted. People often don't see this phase clearly. It doesn't look dramatic. It looks quiet, organized, almost repetitive. But within that repetition, something builds: consistency, stability, direction. The same hours that others lose to distraction become productive simply because they are protected. Eventually, the difference becomes undeniable. While others feel busy without moving forward, he moves forward without feeling rushed. And that comes from one shift: controlling where time goes and where energy is allowed to flow. He develops patience, waiting for the right moment instead of forcing action. Patience replaces urgency. Timing becomes deliberate. He stops forcing outcomes before they are ready. Before, action felt necessary at every moment. Move quickly, respond immediately, push forward even when the situation wasn't fully clear. It felt productive, but over time, something becomes obvious. Not every moment is meant for action. Some moments are meant for observation, and acting too early can weaken the result. As situations unfold, he begins recognizing the difference between opportunity and impulse. A situation appears, but instead of reacting, he watches how it develops. He lets others move first. He allows patterns to reveal themselves. What seemed urgent begins slowing down under observation. Details emerge that wouldn't have been visible in a rushed decision. While others act quickly and adjust later, he delays action until adjustment is no longer needed. From that point, timing becomes a strategic advantage. He moves when clarity is highest, not when pressure is strongest. That shift removes unnecessary mistakes. Decisions feel more precise because they are placed at the right moment. The same action taken too early could fail. The same action taken at the right time succeeds with less effort. That understanding changes how he approaches every situation. Over time, this patience stabilizes his direction. He is no longer pulled by urgency or external pressure. The need to act immediately disappears. Instead, he waits for alignment when conditions, timing, and clarity match. That waiting is not inactivity. It is preparation. While others are moving without full awareness, he is observing, adjusting, and positioning himself for the right moment. People often misunderstand this phase. They see delay and assume hesitation. They see calm and assume inaction. But what they don't see is the control behind it. Every moment of waiting is intentional. Every pause is part of positioning. And when the moment finally arrives, the action is direct, precise, and difficult to counter. Eventually, the difference becomes clear. While others exhaust themselves forcing outcomes, he achieves them through timing. And that timing turns patience into power. He lets results speak, proving others wrong without explanation. Results replace words, no defense, no justification. He stops trying to correct how others see him. Before, there was a need to explain, to prove, to make people understand what they underestimated. But over time, something becomes clear. Words don't change, perception outcomes do. And once that is understood, the need to speak fades. What matters is not what is said, but what is built. As time passes, the focus shifts entirely to action. Effort is no longer directed toward being recognized. It is directed toward becoming undeniable. Progress happens quietly. Skills improve without announcement. Discipline compounds without display. There are no updates, no explanations, no attempts to reshape opinions. While others remain fixed in their assumptions, he moves forward without addressing them. That separation keeps his direction clean and uninterrupted. From that point, results begin forming in ways that cannot be ignored. The same person who was overlooked now produces outcomes that stand on their own. Not sudden, not random, consistent. And consistency is what makes them undeniable. There is no need to argue against underestimation because the outcome replaces the argument entirely. What once required explanation now requires recognition. Over time, this approach changes everything. People begin noticing the shift without being told. The same presence that was dismissed now holds weight. The same actions that went unnoticed now stand out. And because there was no attempt to prove anything, the result feels more authentic. It wasn't built for validation. It was built through consistency. This also removes unnecessary conflict. There is no need to revisit the past, no need to confront what was said or assumed. The result closes that gap automatically. It answers without speaking. It corrects without effort. And it does so in a way that cannot be debated. Eventually, the realization becomes complete. Proving others wrong is not about convincing them. It's about becoming something that makes their doubt irrelevant. And once results reach that level, words become unnecessary. Being underestimated isn't the setback most people think it is. It's the moment where everything becomes clear: who pays attention, who overlooks, and who decides your value before seeing your potential. Most react to that with frustration, but the Sigma male turns it into structure, emotional control, discipline, silence, strategy. Each trait builds quietly until the difference is no longer subtle. It's undeniable. What makes this transformation powerful is that it happens without noise. No need to prove, no need to explain, no need to chase recognition. While others focus on being seen, he focuses on becoming. And by the time results appear, the people who underestimated him are forced to reassess everything they thought they understood. If you want more insights into Sigma psychology, silent growth, and how to turn underestimation into advantage, make sure you subscribe to Silent Wise. And tell me in the comments, do you think being underestimated is a weakness or the perfect position to build real power?